think somewhere there's probably a book called The Fine Art of Having Difficult Conversations. I call it, It's Not Me, It's You. And so if it hasn't been written yet, I think I need to write it. But as a leader, you will have to have difficult conversations with your team over the years, some more than others. And I really do believe that there's an art to it, a way to make sure that you deliver news that people don't always want to hear, or feedback that they may not be excited to receive. There are ways to do it with strategies that are positive and productive, but at the end of the day, it's still a vital part of every business. So I didn't realize that I called these difficult conversations until a few years ago. And I had called one of my team to schedule a time to have a chat. We had to discuss something that was pretty important. And as I called her, I said, hey, I need to schedule some time with you. I need about an hour. Do you have time? And I gave her some options. And we settled on the time, and she said, yes. And is this going to be a difficult conversation? And I stopped and I said, well, what makes you ask that? And she said, because whenever you have to deliver bad news, you always say it's going to be a difficult conversation. And I laughed and I said, wow, I didn't realize that I said those words out loud. And she goes, well, I know it's hard to hear, but then I always know I'm prepared for it. And it was true. It was going to be a difficult conversation, and I did tell her that. And I said, but what do you know about me? And she said, I know that you don't have difficult conversations with people unless there's something that they really need to know. And I know that you don't waste time with people that aren't worth your time. And I was really pleased to hear that, because that was what I tried to really convey to people, is that there's never a time when you're a bother to me. And if I am giving you feedback, it is to make you better. And sometimes I'm giving you feedback because it has to be done. In this case, we had to do a reorg, and her position was being vastly changed. And I knew it was going to be hard for her. I knew it was going to be a tough discussion. But I knew that she could take it, and I knew she was worth it. So by the time we had the conversation, we laughed about it afterward. I really was glad that my team saw that I prepared them, and that they understood that difficult conversations weren't necessarily something that you had to shy away from. Didn't mean it was something you were going to enjoy, but it did mean that I was going to do the best for you that I could. So how do you have difficult conversations with people, and how do you prep for this as a leader? People do it in a lot of different ways, but I found that there's 5 or 6 little bullet points that, to me, I always wanted to keep in mind. And I prepared a great deal in advance to have these difficult conversations with my team. So the first one is, no matter what news you're delivering, whether it's news about their job, the company, changes going on, or it's about feedback for their developmental process, it's really important to be fair and to be honest. And that's not always easy, especially because we want to sugarcoat things sometimes, or sometimes we're very brutally honest, but not always fair. So that balance between fair and honest means that you have to take time to reflect on that first. The second point is, make sure to plan out what you're going to say and how you're going to say it, because the how is just as critical. The delivery of information, how you say something, is almost more important than what you say. And it comes to, in my mind, always to this point of, are you treating someone the way you'd like to be treated? If you're being given bad news, are you given the news in a way that makes you feel respected, that allows you to ask questions? Maybe you don't always have a say in it, but do you feel like you are part of the process? If you are being given feedback that is difficult to hear because it's constructive on for your professional development, are you being given it in a way where you are seen as an individual and you understand that this is being done for the better of yourself as well as for the company? In those cases, how you say what you say is really vital. So, with that being said, the third key element is practice. Once you know what you're going to say and how you're going to say it, you need to practice it. Practicing it can be as little as 5 or 6 times, to yourself in the car while you're driving somewhere, right before a meeting or a phone call. It can be more formal too, where you're actually sitting down with maybe somebody from HR and having them be an active participant in how you're going to deliver whatever this news is. Because as you practice, you're going to hear yourself and you're going to start to put yourself in the same empathetic seat as that person, and hopefully be able to help them adjust to whatever this news is that you're going to have to deliver. So the fourth point is, not only do you have to practice, but you need to ask for feedback, especially in the beginning. Not always. If you are delivering difficult news, though, for the first or second time, making sure that you not only practice, but you have someone listen to you and help guide you through that is vitally important. And new leaders are often really hesitant to ask for that kind of help because they feel like it may look like they don't know what they're doing or they're not qualified for their job. The next most important element of giving difficult information or having difficult conversations is making sure that the person that you're talking to has a way to show you that they have not only received the information, but they're going to act on it and that they're going to change if it's something to do with their professional development. So, giving them this opportunity means that, you're talking very concretely. Like if you say, hey, this is difficult information because we are making a change to the structure of the company, then let them have a chance to talk through it and say, I know this may be really hard for you to hear, and I understand this is not what you anticipated for your career. Because people need to be able to voice their frustration or their questions, and they need to feel like it's okay and it's safe to do so. But on the flip side, if you've also given them feedback on their professional development, so let's say you had somebody and you had to give them feedback on their sales presentation, and you know that they are somebody that is not necessarily always open to that conversation, by saying, this may be a little tough to hear at times, but I want to know what your thoughts are. Does this make sense to you? Do you understand what we're trying to gain by having you follow the sales presentation more closely? So as you have dialogue, you want to give them the chance to dialogue back, make sure that they know, but also that you are looking to see how well they absorb the information. The final element, which is so important, is follow-up. And follow-up means that when you've given somebody news that they didn't want to hear or feedback that was tough, make sure that you tell them then and there when and how you're going to follow up. People need to know that these things aren't just left out there to hang in the ether, that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and that there's new beginnings and new middles and new ends from all the steps that we have to take with things. So for instance, if I had given somebody information about their sales presentation, I would say something like, now, Bob, I'm going to follow up with you in 2 weeks, and I'm going to ask you to share some of the greatest successes that you've had while implementing this. And I'm also going to ask you to share what the challenges have been for you. Don't worry about telling me about the tough parts of trying to adapt to this. I want to hear them because it's about how you evolve. On the flip side, if you've got somebody who you're giving news that they don't really want to hear, like in the case of the story that I told you in the beginning, I was working with somebody who had to have her whole position change. And so at that point in time, to be able to say, look, we're going to continue to talk through this. You are still a viable part of this organization. And I understand that it's not going to feel good to have the position that you had and expected to continue in be changed so radically. So let's continue to talk. Let's continue to find ways to make you know how valued you are here at this organization, and we'll get through it together. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk every Friday, and we're going to talk about what's working, what's not, and how we continue to work on your professional development. So in one case, I was called into this practice with 4 physicians. They'd been in business for about 20 years. And one of the first steps that I take is to interview every single person on the staff, from the physicians to the receptionists and everywhere in between, and spend time talking to every one of them about what do they love about the practice, what would they change if they could, what's getting in their way of feeling successful. And one of the common themes, and I don't mean one of the common themes, the common theme was the way people talked about this person, Lori. The comments were things like, Lori is a tyrant. Lori yells at us. Lori makes me crazy. Lori makes me cry. I want to quit. People have quit. So the stories went on and on. So after I had interviewed the entire staff, I sat down with the physicians and said, tell me about Lori.